Hello everyone, and welcome to another story time with the Children's Museum of Cleveland. For this story time, we'll be traveling around the world hearing some classic stories. Our first one is Cinderella from the Once Upon a World series by Chloe Perkins. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a cottage with her stepmother and two stepsisters. The girl was very kind and caring, and she had a good heart. Oh, but her stepmother was cruel. She made the girl sweep the floors and clean the fireplace like a servant. Each day, the girl became filthier from all of her chores. Because she was always covered in dust from the floors and cinders from the fireplace, her wicked stepsister named her Cinderella. One day, while Cinderella was scrubbing the walls, there was a knock on the door. It was the king's messenger. Cinderella listened to the conversation. The messenger said that there would be a grand ball at the palace. All the ladies in the kingdom were invited. Cinderella's stepmother went straight to the marketplace and bought the most beautiful fabrics and ribbons and jewels that she could find. "Here, Cinderella," she said when she returned. "Now you will sew us 3 fabulous dresses to wear to the ball." Cinderella spent all day and all night sewing the dresses. Finally, as the sun began to rise, she was finished. Her stepsisters marveled at the beautiful gowns. Cinderella wished she could go to the ball with them, but she knew her stepmother would never allow it. So she got back to her chores. That night, Cinderella bid farewell to her stepmother and stepsisters as they left for the ball. When they had disappeared from view, poor Cinderella fell down in tears. Suddenly, she heard a voice. "My dear, what's all this crying?" Cinderella wiped her eyes and saw a kind-looking woman who seemed to be floating. She was shining and sparkling and holding a wand. Who are you?" Cinderella asked. "Why, I am your fairy godmother," said the woman. "Tell me what you wish for." "I wish to go to the ball," replied Cinderella. The fairy godmother smiled. With a few flicks of her wand, things around them suddenly began to shine and sparkle too. Poof! A pumpkin became a beautiful carriage. Poof! 3 mice became horses. Poof! An old farm dog became a handsome coachman. Finally, poof! Cinderella's tattered dress became a magnificent ball gown, and her old shoes became delicate slippers made of glass. As Cinderella stepped into the carriage, her fairy godmother said, "This magic will wear off at midnight. You must return before then." And off the carriage went. When Cinderella arrived at the palace, everyone thought she was a beautiful princess from a faraway land. They all wanted to talk and dine and dance with her, even Cinderella's own stepsisters. But it was the charming prince of the kingdom who asked her to dance. Cinderella and the prince danced for hours. "Please tell me your name," said the prince. But just as Cinderella was about to answer, the clock struck midnight. The spell would be broken. Without another word, Cinderella hurried away, accidentally leaving one of her glass slippers behind on the palace steps. She raced home as the spell wore off. Her beautiful gown turned back into rags. The next day, Cinderella's stepsisters told her all about the ball and the mysterious princess who had captured the prince's attention. They were jealous at the mystery girl. Suddenly, there was once again a knock at the door, and once again the king's messenger was there. But this time, he was with the prince. The prince was searching for the young woman he danced with. He was determined that each lady in the kingdom would try on the glass slipper until he found its owner. Both Cinderella's sisters tried on the shoe. It was tiny on the first stepsister's foot, and it was too big on the other stepsister's foot. Then Cinderella came into the room. The stepsisters thought it would be funny to have her try on the glass slipper. After all, it would never fit Cinderella. "Try it on, Cinderella," they encouraged, laughing. But when the prince slipped on the shoe onto Cinderella's foot, It was a perfect fit. The prince recognized her instantly. Even without the beautiful ball gown and sparkling jewels, Cinderella's true beauty shined through. Cinderella and the prince embraced, overjoyed that they had found each other. Then, in the castle where they had met, Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after. The end. And now, on to our next story, Snow White. Once upon a time, there was a princess called Snow White. She lived in a magnificent castle with her stepmother, a beautiful but wicked queen. Each day, the queen would ask her magic mirror, who was the fairest in the land. You are, the mirror would answer, until one day. Snow White is the fairest of them all, said the mirror. The queen was suddenly very jealous of Snow White. She ordered a servant to do away with the princess at once. The queen's servant led Snow White deep into the forest, but he had a change of heart. He warned Snow White about the queen. He told the princess to run far, far away. Soon, night fell. Snow White walked alone through the dark forest. Just as the sun began peeking through the trees, she came upon a little cottage. It was filled with little teacups and little lanterns and even little beds. Who lived in this tiny house? The princess was so tired, she fell fast asleep. When Snow White awoke, there were 7 little sets of eyes watching her. They belonged to the 7 dwarfs. The 7 dwarfs were kind, and they agreed to help Snow White hide from the evil queen. The next day, the 7 dwarfs had to leave the cottage. Don't let anyone in, they warned the princess. But the queen had discovered where Snow White was. She came to the cottage disguised as an old woman selling apples. Come, my dear, said the queen in her disguise. I will give you the best apple in my basket. Snow White remembered the dwarf's warning, but when she peeked out and saw it was just an old woman, she opened the door. The evil queen gave the princess the shiny red apple. Snow White took a small bite. Suddenly, she fell down, poisoned. The queen laughed wickedly. Only true love's kiss can wake you, she said, and then ran away. When the dwarves came home, they found Snow White. They quickly put her into bed. Then, one night, there was a terrible storm. A prince was walking through the forest when he came upon the little cottage. He hoped whoever lived there would give him shelter. The 7 dwarfs gladly took in the prince. They told him about the sleeping princess. The prince asked to see Snow White. When he saw her, he knew he loved her and gave her a kiss. Snow White suddenly opened her eyes. The prince's love for her was true, and it broke the spell. Snow White thanked the dwarves for all their help. Together, she and the prince returned to the prince's kingdom, and they lived happily ever after. The end. For our final story, we'll be reading Rapunzel. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Rapunzel. Rapunzel had long, beautiful hair and a lovely voice. She lived by herself in a tower on a hilltop. When Rapunzel was a baby, a witch had taken her far away from home, through a forest and into this tower. Rapunzel was never allowed to leave. When the witch needed to visit, she would call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel would throw down her long braid. The witch would climb up to the tower window. Rapunzel was lonely in the tower by herself. Sometimes a mouse or a bird would visit, and she longed for a real friend. One day, a prince came riding through the woods when he heard the melody coming from the tower window. He thought, there must be a girl up there as lovely as that song. Suddenly, the witch appeared, and the prince hid in the bushes. He watched her call for Rapunzel and then climb up her hair. The prince waited for the witch to leave, and then he too called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel let down her hair, but when she saw the prince in the window, she gasped. "Who are you?" she asked. The prince bowed and introduced himself. Then he and Rapunzel began to talk. They talked for hours. Rapunzel told the prince about life in the tower, and the prince listened. He was falling in love. The prince began to visit Rapunzel every day. She loved when he told her stories about the outside world. He talked about his horses, the beautiful streams he liked to walk along, and the little village nearby. Rapunzel wished she could see what was beyond her tower. "Come with me to my kingdom," said the prince one day. "The witch will never let me leave," sighed Rapunzel. The prince took her by the hand and promised to help her escape. Later that day, the witch saw the prince climbing down Rapunzel's hair. "We will leave tomorrow," he called up to his love. The witch was furious. As punishment, she cut Rapunzel's long, beautiful hair, and with a wave of her wand, she cast Rapunzel from the tower deep into the forest. The next day, the prince returned. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," he called. Rapunzel's beautiful hair came tumbling down. But when the prince climbed up the window, the witch was waiting for him. The witch put a curse on the prince that made him unable to see. Blindly, the prince escaped from the tower. He called Rapunzel's name, but she was too far away to hear him. He wandered in the forest, searching for his lost love. Many days passed. The prince almost gave up hope. Then one day he heard a lovely melody. It was Rapunzel, and he was sure of it. "Rapunzel!" he called out. Reunited, Rapunzel and the prince embraced. When Rapunzel learned that the witch's curse had made the prince blind, she wept and wept. But as Rapunzel's tears fell onto the prince's face, something magical happened. Her tears broke the witch's curse, and the prince could see again. Rapunzel and the prince returned to his kingdom. There, far from the witch's tower, they lived happily ever after. The end. For more programming like this, see cmcleveland.org.